It's very interesting to consider that till the 19th century, the idea of being able to say who you are would be a very, very complex question. You would probably say that you are the son or daughter of a parent, usually a father. You would probably say your address, and you might say your profession. And I think this sort of then brings us to a very, very interesting thought about exactly not just who we are, but where we are in space. And this session really is, and I'm pleased that that Richard actually came up with the idea of linking, because it's the way forward between the real and the ideal. So allow me just to have a few words about the real and the ideal, because I don't think our two presenters are going to speak, they're going to speak sort of more detailed about it, but I would like to just have an opening of some few words. And I was helped by Emma over here, who was given to me as a docent, and she has also helped me in preparing this. I think the pursuit of the ideals, Isaiah Berlin wrote a series of essays, an amazing group of essays. Obviously, his famous one is The Hedgehog and the Fox, which I think we all know about. But he also wrote an essay called In the Pursuit of the Ideal. I'd like to just read this section so we can actually focus on this problem of the power between this reality and the ideal. He speaks about Giambattista Vico's new science. And Vico seems to be concerned with the succession of human cultures. Every society had for him its own vision of reality, of the world in which it lived, and of itself and of its relations to its own past, to nature, and to what it strove for. This vision of a society is conveyed by everything that its members do and think and feel, expressed and embodied in the kinds of words, the forms of language that they use, the images, the metaphors, the forms of worship, the institutions that they generate, which embody and convey their image of reality and of their place in it, by which they live. These visions differ with each successive social whole. Each has its own gifts, values, modes, and creation, incommensurable with one another. Each must be understood in its own terms, understood, not necessarily evaluated. I think it's quite an amazing understanding, and there's a wealth of bringing together some of these ideas, but I think that the word which I would like to pick up from Barbara is that expectation. Now, expectation is not just simply the Holy Grail, but the expectation of paradise. So being here in Korea, we have to speak about Shangri-La, and perhaps Gala will be able to help me a little bit more on that. But in fact, that we find that each society has then the idea of a Garden of Eden, a paradise, Shangri-La. And whether in fact that it also relates then to the Muruing Do Won, which is also a similar pattern then, which relates then to Chinese philosophy. And the question is the ideal a place or a time? And in other words, this is a very big issue. When we want to go to the Garden of Eden, then, okay, this is then a place. Shangri-La is a place which we actually be. Is the place in earth? Is it in heaven? Or is it a time? At what time do we then understand ourselves? So I think that this is understanding, and we, from architecture or as urbanism, we tend to look at utopias. But God help us and God protect us from these utopias, because this is where fundamentalism comes in. So the enemy of good is best. Voltaire took this over from the Italian, l'ennemi du mieux est le bien. So it is a really very, very complex issue, which I would like to then relate to the fact of interpretation, which I just touched upon yesterday morning, and with this I will end. But the idea, therefore, of existentialism is that the ideal is there just to give a depth of perspective to our own understanding of reality. It is not something to have heaven on earth. And this is where the existentialist is very, very happy to be able to understand this dimension. The historicist and fundamentalist says, no, the Messiah will be here now, the end of the world is here, and there we have an enormous problem. So I think, therefore, the management of understanding expectations of people, ideals, comes back to very much that the enemy of good is best. Shakespeare in King Lear said, "Striving to be better, oft we mar what's well." So I think that in actually putting this together, I think that when we talk about reality, we have to understand where our utopia is, and exactly whether in fact that we are speaking a wider subject, that each culture, a successive culture, builds their utopia, as mentioned in Vico, or whether we see that within this utopia we all share something of universality, of a paradise, then this is something which we have to come to grips with. But we have to then leave space for the other, leave space for people's paradise to take place. And this is the greatness of architecture, being able to say that we actually put this together in this way. We had invited Charles Moore, which I'm sure you all will remember, to come to visit Bezalel. And he gave a presentation about designing a church, which he did in America. And he said he came to the final details of the inside of the church. And the two groups was debating exactly whether they wanted Jesus on the cross with blood from the nails, or whether they would prefer then a more abstract structure. And the church community was divided half and half. So he had the opportunity of designing a cross, which if you sat on this side of the church, you would see it as an abstract form. And if you were to sit on this side of the church, you would be able to see the real Christ. So I think there's something about the importance of cultural ambiguity. And with this, we should then move on to our first speaker. And let me just get over here. Yes. Dr. Soo-Jeon Lee from the Cultural Heritage Administration. And we managed to receive her presentation. I think we all managed to get it. Between the idea and the real, problems and limits in the Korean case. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.